In this lesson, we'll learn how to set up multiple parents in a space switching system. Now, whether it's called space switching or dynamic parenting, they're one and the same. The idea is the same, to set up one or more parents and then to have the freedom to turn the system on and off. This is ideal for animation. Alright, so let's say we get started. We're going to work with the legs in this lesson, and we'll have them constrained between the pelvis and center of gravity. Let's get started by grabbing our leg controls. We'll head over to Modify, Add Attribute. We'll name our displayable attribute Driver. Choose Add. And now we're going to work with a different data type. We'll work with an enumerated type. You'll see that we're now able to work with text, and each word is represented by a number. So green is 0, blue is 1, and so on and so forth. Now for us, since we want to be able to turn the system completely off at some point, we can always work with this first word here, green, and we can simply rename this to world, meaning that the legs will be parented to the world or will not be influenced by anything. So we'll go ahead and just rename that, hit enter to update the name. For blue, we can go ahead and name this, let's say, center of gravity, or COG. And take a look, we can now create another name if we'd like. We'd simply click on the blank space underneath COG, and we can go ahead and call this pelvis. Now we need to name the channel. Let's go ahead and call that follow, so it's very clear as to what it's used for. And we're ready to now choose OK. So take a look, when we head over to our channel box, we have a very fast way to switch between our parents or to turn the system off by choosing world. Alright, great. So now it's time to create our groups. Let's go ahead and open up our outliner. We'll go ahead and select the left leg control, and we'll go ahead and press the F key to find it. Alright, now we don't only want to group our leg control, we also want to grab the knee control as well and add that to the group. Otherwise, as the pelvis, let's say, starts to move, and as it starts to control this leg, the knee's going to stay behind. So the knee selected and our leg control selected, we'll go ahead and press Control G. You'll see that the pivot is centered between the two objects because of the setting we changed in our group command. However, whether it's set to center or origin, this would still work just fine. Let's go ahead and rename this group to grp_cns underscore enum l leg 01. Alright, so we have our first constrained group in place. Let's go ahead and create one for the right leg. So we'll grab our knee control, we'll grab the leg control, and again, that's going to be Control G. We'll rename this to grp cns enum r leg 01. Alright, great. So it's now time to set up our constraints. So now, when you're setting up these constraints, you would first grab the objects that will control the object being constrained. So we'd want to grab our center of gravity and the pelvis first, and then we grab the constrained object. So that's the last in our selection. Let's go ahead and control click the constraint group for the left leg, and we'll now apply a parent constraint. Maintain offset should already be on. Great. So the leg will not shift. Alright, now watch this. Remember, in the last lesson, we discussed that when we're working with multiple weights, we can actually create blending this way. So if I were to set the center of gravity to 0, watch, as we start to take the pelvis and rotate it, you can see that it's controlling the leg, whereas the center of gravity does not. It looks like it's controlling the leg because the pelvis is, of course, parented to that. But now watch this. When we go in and we start to blend back, let's go ahead and grab our group again. We'll find our weight. Let's go ahead and start to increase the weight of the center of gravity. You can see how we're able to blend back to our start point. So what we could do then is increase the center of gravity to 1. And we can now set the weight of the pelvis to 0, and we're back to where we started from. And now here's the beauty of this. You'll see that, yes, as we move the center of gravity, the leg will follow, but as we start to rotate the pelvis, the leg is not going to be influenced at all. You can see how the leg controls stay put. All right, great. So let's go ahead and zero this out. We'll go back to our constraint. We'll go ahead and set both weights to 1. We could start here. Alright, it's now time to set up our switch, and we can always work with driven keys. So what we'll do is go to the Animate menu. We'll choose the Set Driven Key Set dialog. We need to grab our leg control and load that as the driver. And the driven object, remember that's not going to be the group because there's no blend parent on the group. So this time we need to go directly to the constraint. Let's go ahead and expand our group and grab the parent constraint and go ahead and load that as the driven object. Right now our follow switch, if we were to go ahead and select the object, which we can do from the driven key dialog, if we were to go ahead and select that object and take a look at what follow is set to, right now it's set to world, meaning that our 2 weights here should be set to 0. Let's go ahead and turn those off. And we'll choose follow. We'll go ahead and highlight our 2 weights, and we'll go ahead and choose key. All right, now let's go ahead and switch our follow setting to center of gravity. We'll now go to our parent constraint. We'll go ahead and set the center of gravity to 1, and we'll leave the pelvis's weight at 0. And again, we'll choose key. And we just have one more to do. Let's go ahead and switch the follow setting to pelvis. We'll go back to our parent constraint. This time we need to swap our values. So the COG will be set to 0 and the pelvis will be set to 1. And we're now going to create one last driven key. Now these driven keys can be found by simply selecting the object that we've applied them to and going over to our graph editor. So that's Window, Animation Editors. We'll grab the graph editor, and here we'll find all of those weights. We can press the F key to zoom into them. So if you need to edit any of your values, you most certainly can from here. Or if you need to, let's say, clear out all of those driven keys, you can simply highlight all keys here and just simply press the delete key, and now they're gone. Alright, so I'll go ahead and undo that back. Just wanted to show you that. Alright, so right now the pelvis is active. So if we were to grab the pelvis control, you could see that the leg control will follow. Now if we were to go ahead and just bring up the pelvis, go back to our leg control, watch this. We can go ahead and set this to center of gravity. Notice how the leg is going to be brought back. When we grab the center of gravity, you can see the legs will follow. Alright, now if we were to go ahead and go back to our leg control and set this to world, neither the pelvis nor center of gravity will influence that control. Very nice. And the great thing is that we can animate between this, but you'll see that we don't have any blending at this point because we work with an enumerated data type. Now sometimes this is the preferred method for setting up these types of space switching features, because sometimes when we blend back and forth we have issues, especially for more complex animations where the character is moved to a very drastic pose, and when we try to blend back to another space where the pose isn't as extreme, Maya tries to blend between those two spaces in a way where we might get a bit of flipping in the constrained object. So to prevent that from happening, we can simply go ahead and set up a type of enumerated switch so that we don't have to worry about the problems that happen when we blend back and forth. So that's just an idea, and that's exactly why we set up an enumerated type instead of a float type. Alright, great. So I'll go ahead and zero out our controls here. We've set up the left leg. I'm going to leave the right leg up to you because, again, the steps are exactly the same. So we've learned how to set up a multi-parent space switching feature for our rig, which is super cool. When we're ready to move on and work on setting this up on our own, you might consider doing this for the ARM controls as well, just so you can get into the habit of working with this type of system, because animators will really appreciate that.